I might have my mic on, guys. Chelsea completed their mission, which was to qualify for the Champions League. But is there more to the project? And will the success continue? How did the season really go? Find out right here on Toon Tactics TV, folks.
Brilliant from Cher. And now Murphy can take on the shot. Bobby and Cher
All right, folks. I hope you are all doing brilliantly and are doing well. I'm so excited for tonight's show. Our previous show with Ash Mack went absolutely really well. The chat was off the chain. Apologies, I couldn't get everybody's comments in. It was just so many people, but it's always great to see you guys engaging. And I don't know about you, but I learned so much more about Tottenham, about their season from Ash, in his like technical, but like kind of real kind of eye for the game and everything else. It was absolutely stupendous. So I hope you guys enjoy it. And that's why I'm looking forward to tonight's show as well. With, I consider one of our own, in Bobby Fairview, one of our regular viewers that come on as well. You guys are recognizing he's been on the show before as well, talking all things Chelsea with our guy, Big Steve as well. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce him in a moment. Just to let you guys know, we're going to be reviewing Chelsea's season a little bit, talking about their playing style, talking about just getting Bobby's view on all things Chelsea, really, as well as who he thinks would be coming in and transfers and all that, and getting his view on Newcastle United, because it's always important to get opposition fans' view. I feel like obviously they're unbiased, they're dispassionate towards our club because they're not supporting our club, but it's all a bit different. So without further ado, allow me to introduce Bobby Fairview to the show. How you doing, sir?
Very well, Philip. Always happy to be here. How are you?
Living life to the full. Living life to the full. So
I think I'll remember that saying forever. Just hearing you say
it. People always tell me that it's just my way of just always trying to keep strong, keep upbeat as always. So I hope you've had. Otherwise, I hope you're having a great week so far.
I am indeed. A little bit boring now that the football is finished, but we look forward to the Club World Cup.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you've seen tonight's game with France and Spain. I just saw Cherky's goal.
I haven't gotten that far yet. I was actually doing a bit of work and then I had it delayed, so I'm only at half time. So, but it sounds as though it was a proper beatdown.
Very, oh gosh, Spain gave them a lobotomy, is all I can say. All right, so already good to see folks in the chat. Adrian Pickett, good to see you, sir. God bless you. Evening, gents. Evening to you, Adrian. Always good to see you. And my man, Aaron Cave, good to see you, sir. God bless you. Hi, Philip and Bobby. Hope you are both well. Yes, indeed we are. And even to you guys, and always a pleasure to see you guys also welcoming each other into the chat. So without further ado, as I said, let me kick things off with Chelsea and I. Guys, this time I try to make the words bigger in the chat. I will try zoom in the screen and stuff like that. Don't be afraid to tell me, you know, maybe you want me to zoom in a little bit because I can't always see, because it's the way the screen moves and I'm old. I can't always see everything at the same time. I can't always see the chats. So don't worry don't think I'm ignoring you guys if I'm not zooming in. Like, sometimes I can't always see what's in the chat, but we're here. From a rival's perspective, the Chelsea identity. So Bobby, I went as I did with Ash when we talked about Tottenham. I went on FB Ref. So the stats that I looked through was for the strictly on the league. So it's going to be a bit different to maybe what was expected, obviously, in Europe. So it's kind of looking at the 38 games. And some interesting stuff that what we got from Chelsea as well. And I wanted to get your take on things and whether you kind of, what your thoughts are as well, kind of building a framework on all things Chelsea, really. So from what we got is Chelsea employ a possession-based style, which probably agree about 50. It's got 581. It's 58.8%. Sorry, 50 is 500. It is passes 581.8 passes per match, which is a lot. I think you got like an average percentage of like 58% possession all games, which is incredible.
Sounds right.
Yeah, sounds right. Yeah, 89% short passes. So that seems to be like the main kind of pass type that you have. So it doesn't sound like obviously you're not like you're not a transition team or an Everton kind of thing where you're kind of doing vertical balls over the top. You rank aggressive passes, which are first off 240, and it can't be 2 per 9 minutes. I'm going to think it's going to be about 2.9 per 9 minutes, and passing to the which is not 154. It's going to be a little bit smaller than that, way smaller than that. Goal man today, indicating a methodical build. So defensively, also you press aggressively. 0.9 tackles in the defensive. Good. 62.2 tackles, successes in defensive. That's headers, duels, ground duels, interceptions, and shot creating actions, 22 per 90, and expected goals of 1.8. So nearly 2 expected goals per 90, which is very similar-ish to us as well. So kind of suggesting often through your wing play, I think you don't really have. Let me know in terms of how you do things. What's your kind of general take on Chelsea and kind of your style of play and what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm not seeing the feedback from the chat, but I think, as you had warned me, you're breaking up a little bit there, Philip. I think I got the gist of everything, but maybe these folks in the chat might be giving some feedback about crackling. Okay. Hopefully it's not coming from my side. Am I clear?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly. Oh, sorry.
Perfect.
You keep talking, I'll fix myself.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult to look at the season through the statistics because I want to say we had almost 3 phases to this season, if you like. And it will be good to understand what those statistics were at each phase. And I don't think the reporting is that sophisticated that we can do that easily. Maybe AI can help us. But let me just talk about the 3 phases of the season quickly. It started off, I think, well, actually, let us start before the season. Let's think about the preseason. What you would find is that we were shipping a ton of goals against the likes of Celtic, etc., during the preseason. A lot of fans who are supportive of, or who were supportive of recruiting Maresca, were excusing it as, new coach, new players trying to adapt. But we had never been losing games like that to very weak teams. So there were clearly, and I had concerns at the time about Maresca's ability to actually set up a defense because it didn't look as though he could. Fast forward to the start of the season. Opening match was Manchester City. Went as most people expected, where we lost, but we actually played pretty decent. I don't think people realize, though, that Man City had the fundamental problems that we've seen them have all season. They would have been experiencing them then. So we actually made City look good for that opening game, from my perspective. You had Kovacic in a single pivot owning Chelsea's midfield, from my perspective. So that to me was a sign that we weren't quite as strong defensively as we should have been, and we then went into a period of matches where we had an easy run of games. All right, so this is where Chelsea started to look good. We powered up the table, and I think what was helpful to that was being in the Conference League, because although we had some setbacks, losing to Servette in the playoff before the Conference League, that opening match to City, as we played Conference League games, the team began to get confidence. And then what you found was that a number of the opposition teams were also not taking their chances against us. Now, in terms of style of play, it looked very much like Poch ball. So if I were to interpret that, Maresca tried to implement his stuff during the preseason. It failed catastrophically. He then reverted to transition football effectively. Teams were were not taking their chances against us. And if you looked at the XG table for the first third of the season, you would see that we were outperforming our expected goals against by more than anybody else, other team in the top 10 of the league table. And I mean materially so. So we were like +7 or something like that. Teams did not score against us. You had the likes of Bournemouth. When we should not have won that game against Bournemouth. Bournemouth missed a penalty and several chances against us. We had one chance, took it. So that was the first early part of the season when people became impressed, thought Maresca was a genius. But from my perspective, he was living off a potch ball. He then started to implement his system, and you found that we were doing a lot more sideways passing, control of the ball. You would see him demanding the team to slow it down, etc. And you also, that coincided with Jackson losing confidence in front of goal. Palmer, I think, was then out of form as a result of the system change that Maresca did. But we stopped leaking as many goals as we were earlier as well. So that's where you saw our defense kind of tighten up. But we only won 2 games in 10 matches, right? So if you think, right, so that was the story of the second part of the season. We fell out of contention. We became a laughing stock again. And then the final and third part of the season is what we saw in the last 10 games, where we were all predicted to struggle. You see once again Maresca abandoning his principles, more of a transition style. You see, for example, in that last game there against Forest, Palmer was quoted as saying he just stopped passing the ball and started to be more direct. And basically won the game for us. So that's, in my mind, you have this attempt at this possession-based ball, or possession stats would have gone up in that middle period. But that was the most unproductive period for us. So to summarize it, I don't think that possession-based football has worked for Chelsea very well this year.
And do you know what? Can you guys hear me better now? I hope you can. I really hope you can.
You're perfect.
Brilliant. Because I don't know if you're aware of Adam Cleary. I use some of his stuff on the videos sometimes as well. It's from 4. It used to be on 442, but now it's got his own channel. But he basically kind of said the same thing you said, where Chelsea, especially what you described in the first, second period, where they weren't winning. He said the first half of the season, really, where you had the more possession you had, the less games you won.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So that was interesting. It goes into the strengths and weaknesses, which is interesting. Where by higher passing, because when we look at the FBref stats, obviously the possession is seen, obviously possession and passing are seen as a strength. Maybe in and of itself, it's a strength, but it's not a strength when you're not winning games, obviously. So higher pass completions, 89, nearly 90% there. Progressive passing as well, which allow you to control games. But how that worked out it didn't work out too well. You had relative defensive solidity, 42 tackles per 90, as well as blocks in defensive areas. You had 3.6. You weren't scoring that many goals from corners. I don't know how big the team is, though. I don't know if they're small. Maybe asking the moment.
Very short.
Very short.
Yep. It was horrific. Horrific squad building. Like, you can't make it up. You cannot make up the incompetence. But carry on.
And talking about finishing, obviously I don't know if I know you're going to get onto that in terms of your finishing, underperforming on your XG, where your XG suggests about 1.82, but your scoring you got 1.53. So you're not matching your XG, so you're underperforming by 0.018, so 18%. Discipline, again, I've got 2 ways of looking at discipline. High yellow cards, not 436, I don't know where I got that from. And 2 red cards. it depends. Me, I view sometimes cards as teams getting tight to players. It kind of matches with your high pressing style and everything else, but maybe you might look at it differently. We'll get onto the injuries as well, I think you've had relatively low injuries. I mean, from what you've described so far, is there anything that you want to add to that in terms of your strengths and weaknesses? What are some of the things that you did feel like, okay, this isn't bad. Like this is a quality. This is a strength that we have.
Look, I think just going back to your very first statement here, that possession-based football is seen as a strength. I think that's a hoax that's been perpetrated on football fans since Pep, really.
Right.
It is not within Chelsea's DNA to have a possession-based style of football.
Right.
If you look at the history of what has made us the most successful club in the UK prior to Todd Bowley takeover, the prior 20 years under Roman, winning a trophy every season was not because of possession-based football. There is a reason why Barcelona didn't like to play us in the Champions League, right? Because we don't care for that style. Pace and power, the Ballocks, the Lampards, the Terrys, these hard-nosed kind of players, that's what brought us success. Drogba, strong guys. What has happened to us is that we have got the youngest squad the second youngest squad in Europe, which could explain the disciplinary issues that you raised there. Right. And I think some of that is unique to Caicedo, by the way. He just spends the entire match tackling people, and he doesn't always do it elegantly. Okay, so as brilliant as Caicedo is in some respects, when you really sit down and think about his game, is he really controlling the game? Is he just breaking? What is he actually doing? All right, and I, last time I was on the show, my comments on Enzo Fernandez are well documented in terms of the limitations of his game, which we can revisit. But yeah, so I think in terms of strengths, what I think we do well, I think. Look, whenever we allow Palmer to have that free roll, he tends towards the right side. I think the season with him going through the ups and downs of following Maresca ball, then proving to Maresca what works and what doesn't, I think all that has been positive. I think going through the Conference League experience has been positive, given the relative age of the players and having that trophy under their belts. I mean, most of us who are legacy supporters, we're disgusted by that trophy. I mean, to me, it's a penalty for failure in the prior year. But I think that was positive for the team and the ability to execute on that. I think the way it exposed Maresca, so you can see the proverbial game of two halves in the final there, where we were really poor against Betis, then the players threw away the Maresca ball and won the game. So I think all of that was good to show that, look, this team has the ability to do important things, do comebacks, and win trophies, get things over the line. So I think that's been positive for the year.
Do you think it's going to, this hopefully will segue nicely into the next part where I'll talk about individual players. Because you mentioned it, and I've heard it elsewhere, which is Maresca has what he wants to do. And essentially in game time, the players follow it, and then they say, "Nah, enough of this," and they kind of go into what they want to do. I.e., Palmer being more direct and just doing his own thing, essentially. Players almost choosing to be more, also kind of play through to transitions, which is what the team I feel like is a little bit more built for. Do you feel the same where like sometimes the players are playing despite of Maresca?
I think we made top four in spite of Maresca. I think we won the Conference League in spite of Maresca.
Right.
The turning point was that Fulham game recently where we went away to Fulham.
Yes.
We were not expected to win. That was the turning point where the players said, "Screw this, we're going to do our own thing."
Yeah.
And you saw a lot of Mavericks. You look, Chelsea's squad has been put together terribly, but they've not bought bad players. There
Right.
is talent there. So when you and what Poch used to do was to just let them play, right? So we scored a ton of goals last year, although we've got poor strikers, right? Because there's underlying talent there. So once that got unleashed against Fulham, they couldn't cope. We were always a better team than Forest, for example. We
Yes. Yeah.
we're not a better team than Newcastle, so nothing worked there. um,
Ah,
so so yeah, I think the players for sure after that Fulham game said, "Screw it, we got to do this ourselves because these tactics are not working."
and that's going to be so interesting to see how that plays out in this next season, especially with the pressures of Champions League and everything else on top of that. And we spoke about so moving on to the individuals and your key and consistent performers. Annoyingly, I forgot to put the goals for the guys up, but I'll talk about that. Goalkeeper, I know that it's this man is controversial, but Roberto Sanchez, and this is a consistent performance. I'm not saying quality necessarily. Roberto Sanchez obviously started at least 32 matches with nearly 3,000 minutes. This is obviously always in the league. It's not to do with the cup competitions. He's making about 3.17 saves per match, make over 71.4% in save percentage. So he says he's a key performer with high consistency. I think that's because there wasn't much challenge in him. We'll see if in the goalkeeper, we'll see if that improves. So you're obviously looking at Maignon. Defense, though, a number of players there. You Levi Colwell, please played 35 matches, so that's pretty good. Over 3,000 minutes, 1.97 tackles per 90, 2.29 interceptions, defensive action, which I think is quite impressive. Shows kind of intelligence and then where to be. Well, I'll see what you think about that. Consistent and versatile. Marco Correa, who I've seen you guys pull you guys at the fire a number of times in terms of goal scoring, 33 matches, nearly 3,000 minutes, was 2,988 minutes, 1.99 clearances per interceptions as well as a number of that's defense, midfield. Casado, we talked about him, 37 matches, that's good, 3,351 minutes, 2.6. You talked about the tackles, he's got more tackles than Colwell. Crazy, right? So 2.31 progressive passes, interesting. Defensive actions as well, dominant and consistent. Enzo Fernandez, 32 matches, nearly 3,000 minutes, 2,947, not too bad. 1.62 key passes as well. And in your forward areas, obviously, who else but Mr. Palmer himself? I'm going to ask you about Madueke in a moment as well. But Palmer with 35 games, just over 3,000 minutes, 0.54 goals per 90, with 0.37 assists. So even though he's had a down, we can call it a downturn. Because of the first year he had, it's going to be very difficult to replicate that. But I wouldn't be surprised if he does. So he's been one of your consistent performers. And Noni Madueke, who's come again linked to Newcastle today, interestingly. He's only played 2,200 minutes, but he's been involved and with goals and assists and shooting and kind of been a consistent threat. Obviously, I've mentioned a whole ton of stuff there, Bobby. But for you, in terms of consistent performers, people that you feel like have been the difference and quality that you've kind of enjoyed as well. What's your thoughts on some of the performers in Chelsea's team in this year?
Sure. Look, I think as you went through the list there, I mean, these are some good names that you picked out for sure.
Right.
Robert Sanchez is actually a really, really interesting keeper. And I don't know when you went to look at his stats and see how he ranks with other players, where he lands, right? So just looking at foot mob right now. What really undermines him are the errors that lead to goals.
Yeah.
But then you look at where he is in terms of his rank. He's in the top 10% of keepers for saves, right? So you've got a guy who's really strong in certain areas and weak in others. But he's been a problem because he's actually lost points for the team on too many occasions, which is unfortunate for keepers, but he more than most. Colwell has been interesting. He's progressed well over the season. I'm not really a huge fan. I prefer my defenders to be able to defend as opposed to guys who can make these line breaking passes, etc. So he's probably suited to somebody for that kind of taste. Cucurella, in my mind, is reflective of the problem with Maresca ball.
Okay.
I think it's really not good enough that our highest scorer in 2025 was Cucurella.
Right.
After spending 1.6 billion, that is not okay.
No.
You also have Reece James bailing out the team in a couple matches recently as well, right?
Yes.
Right. So what you're finding is that Maresca ball is putting our fullbacks in these 10 positions, and then our actual 10 is struggling because he doesn't have any space. People are always in his positions. You've got Enzo Fernandez also pushing up, and so at any given time we can have 4 10s on the pitch effectively with these players playing
because of the way they play, because they're all kind of crowding each other out.
Exactly right.
Similar to Tottenham, really, which is weird.
Similar to who? I'm sorry?
Tottenham, because Ash mentioned the same thing about Tottenham.
There we go. Same kind of situation. So for me, this is the problem with this inverting. I know you understand it in terms of creating this box, but to me, the price you have to pay for this is just too much. But Cucurella's star performance, clinical. We'd never seen him score a goal before the season, from what I can remember. But now he's our most prolific player. So that is in of itself a problem. Okay. Palmer's form followed the same thing I discussed earlier about 3 phases to the season. His form basically mirrored that. Has to do with Maresca putting shackles on him. As soon as he's allowed to express himself, you can see what he can do. The way he took apart Forest there in the second half of that.
Even your final against the Betis. I don't know if you thought that. Yeah.
Yes. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about the Betis game in that second half. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, the way he took them apart. The way he took them apart was impressive. I was meaning to say the Betis game. So you can see what he did there at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And so once he's shackled, it's a problem. He's probably the one that regrets Pochettino leaving the most.
Right.
Because Pochettino just had the ability to extract performance from these Mavericks.
Yes. Yeah.
But in terms of star player for the season, you got to say Caicedo. As I said, I think he's the player of the season for sure. We'd be finished without him. But you see the fouls, the yellow cards. He's responsible for a lot of those. Jackson, more so for non-footballing reasons.
We've experienced it.
There we go. Well, I mean, in that instance, I mean, normally it's for silly things, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, this has to do with the naivety of the team. But I would say the player of the season was Caicedo. He's the most consistent. Did not have 3 phases. He was the same.
He's just been the same. Right.
Yeah.
Right. I've got a question about Caicedo because get your thoughts on this really, because I don't know this, but it's interesting because there is a scout on quite a high profile scout that on YouTube who's not on X, who I don't know, I can't tell if he's jesting or he's very serious, but he seems to be very serious because he keeps on going on about it. Like, he feels that Caicedo is not as good as people think he is, in terms of he just thinks that he's super athletic and good at tackling, but that's it basically. I don't think I agree with that, because I have seen Caicedo providing key passes, for instance, as well, and he comes across as positionally aware. Yeah, he knows when to play it short. I'm not saying he's not no Perlo when it comes to long balls, but he can do it if called upon, type of thing. I mean, what's your kind of overall take on the quality of Caicedo? Is he just, this in midfield enforcer, or do you think there's more to his game?
Look, I think he's one of these athletes, right? That's just excellent at the game and anything you ask him to do.
Right.
So I actually think that if you had a different coach who was prepared to drop Enzo Fernandez and not have Caicedo defend for two, you would see a lot more of Caicedo's other qualities.
Right.
Because as you said, you can see a pass in him, right?
Yeah.
You can see a goal in him. Like, he's had some very good goals, right? But he's just not allowed to do anything like that.
Like, if he played in our midfield with Tonali and Bruno, for instance, I think you would see a different Caicedo.
He would cook, right? So right now, all he's doing is doing last-minute tackles at the end to cover for Fernandez.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you want to see him in a different situation to really judge him properly. But he's a talented player.
I think that makes sense. I kind of feel the same a little bit about Morgan Gibbs-White at Forest, because Gibbs-White has to do so much tackling in the middle of the park. People just assume that he's, like, when he was linked to Man City, they were like, why is he linked to Man City? But there's a reason why, for instance, Pep is looking at him and saying, this guy can pass, he can tie the midfield together, and things like that. So I agree. I think, like I said, it's so interesting that Caicedo's got more tackling than Colwill, for instance. I think that tells a story of its own, really.
Well, Colwill is not necessarily the best defender anyway, right?
Right.
That's not why he's in the team. He's there to pass.
Yes.
These are
the opposite of Caicedo. So they've swapped roles.
And this is the confusion of Maresca ball. Okay.
Right.
Why not just have people in normal positions doing normal things for that position, please? We're making this way too complicated.
Why is Correa the top scorer in the second half and not, for instance, Jackson? Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Jackson is struggling. Meanwhile, Palmer is playing left back. I can't remember. It was the second to last game. I saw Palmer pop up at left back at least 4 times in the first half. Mm-hmm. And you're just constantly tweeting, why is Palmer at left back? And this time, Cucurella is up front, probably taking shots on goal. We do not want this. Right? But this is the nature of Maresca ball. I think he's arrogant. He's trying to reinvent the game, trying to prove something. And it's not going to stop until he's sacked.
Interesting. And when the champion, it's going to be when the intensity rises next season, I think we're going to see how it comes out. I mean, injury records now. I feel like we had, so you've had a number. You've had 18 players injured. We had 17. Last year we had 41. So I feel like, let me know a little bit later, but I feel like we've had a decent-ish injury record, in my opinion, just because it feels like, to me, our one was at 17. But you've had 4 players that have missed more than 5 matches. So Wesley Fofana, he's 25 matches. Romeo Lavia, who I think is quality, 14 matches. Reece James of 10 matches. So again, I thought added a lot of maturity to you guys. So the most kind of available players you had, obviously spoke about Caicedo, who's been there for 37 matches, Cole Palmer 35 games, Colwill 35 games as well, and Robert Sanchez. I mean, how do you feel about your injury record? Are you satisfied, or more could have been done, or if you had players like maybe Fofana and Lavia available a little bit more, would your season be a little bit different? I mean, what's your thoughts on Chelsea injury record?
So this is where I'll give Maresca some credit.
Okay.
So in terms of sprints and either as defensive action or an offensive action, Poch ball is a lot more taxing.
Right.
Now, having said that, and there are a number of content creators who like to go on about the fact that Poch, quote unquote, injures players. But you would find that Chelsea's players were not particularly fit by about December. And therefore you started to see a number of injuries start to creep in. Although they had one game a week, the sprints in either direction were significantly reduced. So there is a downside to Maresca's program in that the players are not as fit. Right? You find that we were running out of gas in a number of games, although only playing once a week, or in some instances every 10 days, and we tired by the 70th minute. But it meant fewer injuries across the season as a whole. But look, a lot of this comes back to the ownership challenges that we've had, right? When Clearlake came in with Todd Bowley, they basically ransacked the entire organization and removed basically everyone, including the medical team. And that happened the year that Monk and those guys were there. So the first year of Clearlake, right? And they outsourced it. So the relationship between player and medical provider broken. So apparently the players were not happy about that. But then you also had a horrific injury record. I think we were second to Newcastle in terms of injuries in the Premier.
Yeah. It was you above us. It's you above us.
Oh, we were worse.
Yeah, Man United were top, I think. I think Man United, in terms of separate injuries.
Well, exactly. People blame Poch for that, but what Poch typically comes in and does, he gets the players fit. Their body's accustomed to the workload, so that initially you'll have some teething problems, but then as the season progresses, he's got a very fit squad and they're doing well. And you notice that with the progression of last year. The problem is that these guys bought a bunch of injury-prone players. So the very same Lavia was bought injured. Fofana was bought injured. Okay. I
remember that.
So these guys are paying, tens upon tens of millions of dollars bringing in injured players. Poch is then saying, "Shit, I need to get on with my program." So you have this perfect storm of injuries. Then you don't have a dedicated medical team. So it was complete, self-inflicted chaos last year. Much better year on the injury front. A, because of the style of play. B, because we actually now have a medical team again.
Right. And in terms of, because it's interesting, I can't remember because Pochettino was a disciple of Bielsa, wasn't he? Yeah.
Somewhat, yeah.
And I think people are kind of connecting a lot of problems to Bielsa and his disciple. Because I think they were talking about, did Ash say the same thing about Ange? I feel like Ash said the same thing about
Absolutely.
There's
a graphic that I will share with you that shows sprints in either direction for each team. And Ange is literally an outlier right up in the corner. He's asking players to sprint in both directions. Some team only, when they're some teams aren't pressing at all, so you don't have that defensive sprints. Only have offensive sprints. He's doing on both sides, which correlated with his injuries, right? So
crazy. Well, we've got a number of questions in the chat. One of them I think is relevant to the next part of our chat conversation from the Goat Father, but really good question actually. But Adrian Pickett wants to ask: is Maresca in his post this summer? So do you think Maresca will be in charge come next season? Like in terms of, or do you think we're going to see a different manager?
I think he's here. Look, and it comes back to the ownership, right? And why Maresca was hired. And look, a number of things about the Chelsea takeover and the way the ownership has been conducting themselves, I think it will be beneficial for Newcastle to study, right? Because I think you guys are way too cautious. We can get into that in more detail because you think that the Premier League is going to come down hard on you. Well, so we should talk about that separately. But Maresca was hired last year. I think Egbali made a decision. Or sorry, let's back up. To answer Adrian's question, the answer is yes. I think he's going to be there, and it is because I think he was hired for non-footballing reasons.
Right.
Okay. For the very same reason that Tuchel was sacked, and you had this profile of manager which has been described as a yes man at Chelsea. Now we take that to a different level. A Chelsea coach today has to be prepared to see a key player sold that he wants to keep. And it's only a certain type of manager that will tolerate that. Because there aren't many managers who are going to say, my head is on the block for the results here. If results are poor, you're going to sack me. But you want to sell my star players too. That's the position Poch was in. He wanted to keep Gallagher.
Yeah.
Maresca doesn't give a shit. He's just happy to be there. Okay. So, and that is the kind of manager that's required, because the only way Clear Lake and their investors are going to recover their money is if they run this flip for profit model. So the manager of Chelsea has to be prepared at any time for a player to be sold to make the books work.
And he's obviously happy to do that, isn't he?
Oh, delighted. And he's happy to sit in front of the cameras and lie about it. And that is why I personally have a problem with it.
Right. Well, speaking of players and players coming in and out, we will talk about, we prepared folks on the chat as well. Prior to, I asked Bobby for his views on the players that are coming in and kind of suggestions and stuff like that. And we're going to talk a little bit more. We're going to kind of talk about the strengths and weaknesses of those players, as well as other things to discuss around the transfer recruitment for Chelsea. And it kind of ties in with the GOAT Fathers question, which we're going to kind of tie into this as well, which is the Premier League, was a statement really. The Premier League voted against revenue laundering, basically a loophole Chelsea have been exploiting, which I know, which is very interesting. We're going to talk about that as well, GOAT Father. Aaron Kemp, how do you think Chelsea set up next season? Is there anyone currently on loan who could be thrown into the first team, i.e. Santos Angelo?
Sure. So, you want me to react to the questions?
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry. Well, let's start for the first one.
Okay.
Look, I think, and this is where I think society as a whole, for some reason, people are no longer calling out lawlessness, inappropriate behavior, because it is shocking to me that Chelsea will create a phantom transaction for £200 million to cover up hundreds of millions of losses of operating losses to comply with PSR. And everybody just shrugs. No problem, right? So you have teams with points being deducted because they did not do these kinds of aggressive things. Chelsea does as it pleases, right? Sells something to itself, does not exchange any money, by the way. Okay, so there's actually no cash that change hands here. Just a paper transaction, and all of a sudden Chelsea is compliant. Um, People like say I'm grandstanding, but I believe in fair play. Okay, I for me this is the same thing as a ref not calling us offside and we're scoring goals and winning the league.
Right.
All right, it's the same thing. There's no pride in this. All right, it is absolute cheating. I think the decision by the Premier League not to do anything about it is the correct one, though. And here's why. Just like how they had lax rules before, but as soon as Newcastle comes in, they tighten them up, and Newcastle now is at a disadvantage. It's the same thing. Chelsea goes, makes its books good for the next 3 years, all right? And then close the loophole and nobody else can do the same. That's not fair. Everybody needs to have the opportunity to do this. That's the first thing. The second thing is it can't go on forever. There's only one women's team. There's only one hotel at Chelsea to sell, etc., right? So at some point in time, you're not going to have anything else to sell other than players. So Chelsea is going to get to that point very quickly. Right now, we are incurring, since Clearlake has been there, they have been incurring $200 million of operating losses per year for the last 3 years. And that is different to the
We're on
accounting
90,
loss.
We're on 90, something like that.
But hold on, but that might be your accounting loss.
Okay.
Right? This is so there's an important distinction here. Because I think your 90 might include the amortization of player contracts.
Yeah, it is. It does. Yeah.
When you include all those items, Chelsea's operating loss is $500 million, and has been for the last 2 years.
$500 million.
Clearlake has accumulated losses, book losses, the equivalent of your 90. Their number since they've been there is $1.2 billion of losses. And the reason they're able to do this is the way they've set up the holding companies above Chelsea, right? So they finance the purchase of all the players with debt, and the interest on that debt is not actually in the accounts of Chelsea. It's in a holding company that's removed above it.
Right.
Right. So what is effectively happening here is that Chelsea is benefiting effectively from interest-free loans that are about 120 million of interest per annum to finance that squad that you see right there. And that interest doesn't get brought into PSR, which again is fundamentally not fair. Right? So right now, in my mind, PSR is a joke. It serves no purpose. People are abusing the rules, and Chelsea is leading the way. And this ties back to my comment about Newcastle. You can get away with a lot more than you actually think, and I don't think Newcastle is being aggressive enough on that front.
Well, Aaron, there's a couple of things here as well from the chat. There's a few things we're saying, but I'll go to Aaron's second point, which was what you were talking about. So I'll go up in a moment. PIF need to open up some hotels and resorts and start selling them off for PSR or do something with their own. And they can make a lot of hotels and resorts, PIF, if that's the case. If people want to play that game,
there's lots of games to be played. There's no point trying to be fair anymore. Because it's a joke. Right. It's a joke, right? Sorry, there was a second question. I don't know if I answered the second question.
Sorry, yes. The second question was, I think it was, from Aaron as well. How do you think Chelsea set up next season? Is there anyone currently on loan who could be thrown into the first team, i.e. Angelo Santos? Yeah. What's your thoughts on Santos, and is there anybody else on loan that kind of impressed you?
Yeah, I look, Santos has only just been called up to the Brazil national team. He's not been called up for since his first move to Chelsea, which was almost 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that is notwithstanding the fact that he's been a star midfielder in France all year.
Yes.
Okay. So and you have to bake into the fact that he was at Nottingham Forest and was not successful before going to France.
Yes.
So I'm somewhat skeptical about him. There is another young man that, gosh, how can I forget his name now? I'm drawing a blank right now.
Not Esteval, is it?
Esteval, yes.
Yeah.
So there's Esteval, who again, I think Igbali again sold a bill of goods, bought this kid for a lot of money. Again, he's not any better than Savio because he can't displace Savio from the Brazil national team. So there's a lot of hype around these players. The American portion of the fan base has a perception of Brazilian players and South American players. And I think Igbali and those guys went down that route early.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if Esteval struggles and ends up at the sister club, Strasbourg. He's too small anyway. But if you see starting lineups by Chelsea fans online for next year, you'll see him on the right wing and Palmer in the 10. Okay. For me, this is not going to work.
Right.
Andre Santos could be interesting. I like his profile. If you look at his duels, I mean, he duels well in midfield. I would like to see him. An ideal situation for me is that Enzo gets sold to Real Madrid and Santos takes his place in the team. I think
can imagine.
We would have a much more balanced midfield if that were to happen. So look, but Santos there's enough hype around him, an unproven hype, because as I said, only just got into Brazil. Let's see if he starts for Brazil this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if they put him up for sale. Chelsea needs to sell more players more than they need to buy players right now. We're being linked with everybody.
Yeah.
But we can't actually afford anybody. And I can actually explain to you why when we get into the discussion about the incomings.
Okay, excellent.
But look, I think status quo, just to answer Aaron's question directly, not a huge lot of change. I want to see how Maresca reevaluates how these players have been responding to his system. He has a whole season to look at to see when his methods worked, when they didn't. I expect we really have to take this view after we see who's sold. With UCL qualification, I think there is a much bigger chance of us keeping some players that would I expected Reece James to have been sold. I expected Enzo Fernandez, Madueke. All these are players that I think would have been for sale at the right price. But with UCL qualification, it's going to be a little bit difficult to do. So I expect status quo generally, in addition to Maresca responding hopefully to how his football is working or not working.
Excellent. And we've got a few comments in here. A lot of people are reacting to what you're saying, Bobby, in a very positive way. Goat Father. That's towards Aaron. Apologies, that's towards Aaron. Adrian Pickett, does a sister club have any bearing on PSR? Can it be exploited to hide losses? It's a question to you, Bobby. Does the sister club system have any bearing on PSR? Can it be exploited to hide losses?
It can be, because what I expect the next trick to be is selling players between the clubs at inflated values.
Right.
So, you see what I'm saying?
Right. Which is what people were scared. What we were going to do when we first came in. Hence the whole kind of sponsorship deals and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, I think people are for some reason ready to talk about you guys, but they're not ready to talk about Clear Lake when they do their stuff. But it can be exploited. I expect the next phase of cheating is sales between sister clubs at fictitious values, just like they sold the assets at the very same fictitious values.
Right.
It's an opportunity to sell to yourself, right?
Can't miss that opportunity, I suppose. That's what some people are saying there. Will Butcher, good to see you, sir. God bless you. Hey, Philip, I don't know if you know if you guys covered the overlap in investment firms like Clear Lake, BlackRock, and clubs owners, i.e., major percentage owners in Crystal Palace, West Ham, Chelsea, and Newcastle Pith. I don't know if you guys know. I don't know if you know if you guys cover the overlapping investment firms. Like Clear Lake.
I think I understand the question.
Go on.
So in other words, overlapping investments. So I guess the question is around somebody lending to one and then lending to another. Right. So, for example, Erie's management has loans with Crystal Palace as well, I believe.
Right.
Yes, they do. They have loans with Crystal Palace and also Chelsea. So if you were to go to the financial statements of Erie's management, you will see them listing Eagle Holdings and 22 Holdco, which are the two ultimate parent companies of those two clubs, with some very, very interesting loans. So it happens. There's a lot of it. There's overlapping ownership. There's overlapping lending. I think what's becoming even more complicated and something that a risk that people are not focused on is there's an increase in lending unpaid transfer fees. So Chelsea's unpaid transfer fees, in addition to taking out $1.2 billion of debt to fund this $1.5 billion team, they also have almost $500 million of unpaid transfer fees. Wow. And so this is why, this is what I'm telling you, Newcastle is being very shy, okay? There's a lot of aggressive stuff going on out there. But yeah, what you would have is a club might be running itself really well, but have a big receivable from Chelsea. And if Chelsea goes bankrupt, you'll never get your unpaid transfer fees.
That's right? Crazy.
And these are not small numbers, right? So this is where, for me, this is an emerging risk in the system, in the footballing system. Again, not being dealt with by PSR. And the sooner the UK can get a regulator of football, the better.
Wow. Got a few more comments. I want to get into some of the players that Bobby suggested, but we're going to still talk about it, guys. So don't worry if we move on. Like, we'll still kind of interweave it into what we're talking about. So, because there's some really insightful questions from folks. I can tell that it's a topic of interest. And we've got the Goat Father. The sooner independent regulators come, the better. Premier League rules are not fit for purpose. Don't know what you think about that, Bobby. For me, if it sounds
that's exactly what I just said. That's right. I didn't even read the comment. That's really interesting. That's where the commenters are, right?
Yeah.
Look. There's several things here, and just for context, right? And I don't know how much time you can spend on this, Philip. I can go ahead and comment.
We've got we've got an hour. We've got a few more things in terms of strength, but we've got time. We've got time.
Okay, sure, yeah. So I think, look, the ownership model for football in Europe is problematic. If you examine the ownership of sports clubs in North America, in the US in particular, NFL, NBA, etc., you would realize that institutional investors cannot own sports clubs. So Clear Lake could have. Sorry, there's some feedback coming through.
Sorry, good, yeah.
So Clear Lake could not own an NFL team in the US. And the reason for that is there are specific rules that limit private equity funds in particular. So Clear Lake is a private equity fund. Because these folks are investing money on the behalf of institutions who could care less about the football. They couldn't care less about the results, the quality of the football. They do care about selling merchandise to fans and fan engagement and these other things. So there's a bit of balance there. But in terms of the ownership, prioritizing investment for advancement of sport as opposed to advancement of their pocketbook, the US has prevented ownership of sports clubs by these types of institutions. Chelsea is the first football club in the UK to be owned and controlled by a private equity fund. That should never have been allowed. And that's why this comment around needing a regulator, this is where a regulator steps in and protects the sport. Egbali, who is currently running Chelsea, could not care less about results other than that he does not want fans protesting on the streets.
Right.
He is happy to hang around fourth place with kids with good resale value, et cetera, right? So that, to me, is what's driving a lot of the decision-making and the football model at Chelsea. They love Brighton. They would love to turn us into a big Brighton. That is the model they're implementing here. And Newcastle is owned by a public investment fund. Now, this is interesting. So I don't think Newcastle would have been allowed to have been owned by a public investment fund in the US either. But at least in that instance, the objectives of the owner are not just financial. There's a question of national pride, right? Mm-hmm. This is the Saudi Arabian team. They want to win. The people of Saudi Arabia will not tolerate a team that represents them losing, right? So that at least is a bit more aligned. So I agree completely with that point. We need a regulator. We need regulators in all these European countries to police the conduct of these new owners. And you find private equity is now taking over almost every club in Europe.
That is some deep stuff. Then there's already there's like 3 really insightful questions. I'm gonna from RoboJog, from Aaron. I think I forgot who got it. Maybe is it from Aaron as well? I'm gonna ask them for you, Bobby, if that's all right, towards the end of the show, or once we finish going through these players or whatnot. But really, really good stuff here. Now on to the players. And guys, do keep sending your questions in if you think of something else. Like I am going to ask them as soon as we get through the players. Like it's not, I'm not going to go back to them. I am going to go back to them. Now we've got 3 players. One of the first is you mentioned Bobby is Jamie Gittens. Mm-hmm. This is from his season so far. This is a left wing forward. Jamie Gittens, lightly forward or winger based on his heat map. So I put his heat map together with his stats from the season as well. He has a direct attacking style. He's very kind of heavy. It shows a heavy activity in the opposition's half. So you can imagine, obviously, that's what they have with Dortmund, especially a place for Dortmund. In wide areas and on the final third, you did want a left. Well, from what I know, Chelsea wanted a left winger, indicating a focus on wing play and penetration. He averages 3.5 shot creating actions per 90, which is impressive, and 0.24 goal creating actions per 90. So it sounds really direct, with 1.2 key passes and 1.2 passes in the penalty area. Some good final third action there. His 3.5 progressive carries and 1.2 carries into the penalty area possession. Highlight his dribbling and ability to drive forward. I think we discussed him before, like maybe a couple months ago, around that. And finally, in terms of his strengths and weaknesses. Strengths: dribbling and progression, high progressive carries. The other one is chance creation. He creates 3.5 shot creation actions per 90 as well as take-ons. His attacking positioning, he very, very direct from the left wing. Weaknesses: finishing, which if that's already a weakness at Chelsea, I know that helps. But finishing is an issue for him. Defensive contributions, low defensive stats. I would wonder, and I'll get your take on it, Bobby, in terms of when you talk about him, if that's maybe, I'm going to assume that Dortmund have a lot of possession and possibly don't have to defend as much, but he's got low defensive stats, relatively. At 1.44 tackles isn't, to me, it's not that low, but 0.23 interceptions per 90. And discipline's been marked up. I don't know why. I don't think that's that high. And 1.6 fouls committed per 90. He can be prone to disciplinary issues. Now, he's a player that you've put forward, Bobby. I mean, what's your take on him? You know, why do you think Chelsea? Do you think is it because in terms of the game, in terms of your, what he can add to Chelsea on the football pitch? How comes you've put him forward?
Because he is cheap.
Right. Fair enough.
I think that's why we were linked to him, and he is right-footed, I believe. Is he?
Yeah.
He is. We need a left-sided winger, but the question becomes: is he actually better than Marc Guehi?
Uh-huh.
I don't think he is either. Yeah. Even with Marc Guehi on the left, is he better than Sterling? Even, right? Because I don't think he is. But I think the important
Sterling.
You think he's better than Sterling?
Oh, you think he's better than Sterling?
I don't think I've never seen him play, but I am suspicious that he's not.
Okay.
I don't think that our wingers outperform the job that Sterling did for us on the pitch. People hate Sterling because they had such high expectations of him, but his output was actually not that bad.
Right.
Okay. So all of this, none of this has anything to do with footballing reasons. Whenever Clearly wants to get a player out of Chelsea because of wages, they slander. They do an excellent PR job against the player. I mean, at some point in time last year, you'd simply look at Sterling the prior year and the guys that we had on the wing in the current year, and none of them were outperforming Sterling. But Sterling is hated by the Chelsea fan base. But when you actually look at the substance of it, they just did a job on him. His confidence is shattered, and he's messed up at Arsenal. Okay, but for me, the intelligent decision would be to just play Sterling because we're going to make a financial loss on him anyway. I like Gittens I suggested Gittens because I think he's going to come at a good transfer fee. But when you look at any of his stats, he's not a huge improvement on anybody. Chelsea likes him because he is 20 years old and he can be flipped for profit later. But there's nothing I'm seeing in those statistics that move me one way or the other.
Right. Well, I've got Aaron in the comments. Gittens is a quality player. I would take him in a heartbeat if we end up selling Gordon. For me, Aaron, and I'm just going off of what I can remember we talked about. I know that he's also a Man City Academy player, former Man City Academy player. As Bobby mentioned, he's 21 years old. I think he's got about roughly 2,500 minutes to play this season in Dortmund. I don't think he's as good as Gordon. Hence why
big downgrade.
Yeah, that would be a down. I'm not sure I don't think he's better than Barnes. But I rate Barnes. I think if we're going to get someone, it has to be someone. I wouldn't want to think about if I had to do that, but it wouldn't be for me. It wouldn't be. I would only take a Gittens as an understudy. Like if it was, and my trust would be through Eddie Howe, kind of his coaching and everything else, and our recruitment team. But Yeah, look, he's got. Aaron, let us know what is it? What is it that you like in terms of how do you think he'll suit us if you can? That'd be great to know.
He's
That's
certainly
getting.
not. I remember Sancho was at Dortmund ripping up trees in that
Yeah,
league,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and this guy is nowhere near Sancho's level, right?
Oh.
You've actually just given me the third reason that Chelsea is going to buy him. So he's going to be cheap. He's 20, and he's also ex Manchester City. So
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right, we hired one of the youth coaches from City. So basically, Chelsea has three directors making these transfer decisions, and they just hire players from their old clubs, effectively, or South
Right,
America.
right, right.
So right, so he's got this Joe Shields character. You see, they've just bought Delap. They want this Gittens kid. We got Tosin. The amount of Manchester City rejects are incredible.
There's a lot. There's a lot there. Yeah, let us know. A few folks in the chat there. So that's Mr. And yeah, because who's on your left side currently? Well,
So
obviously Mudrick. We know this.
Mudrick was there. Sancho was
I
there.
won't get you started on Mudrick because I'm sure there's a story there for you in terms of. But we won't go.
That was a different time at Chelsea. But yeah, that in of itself is an interesting conversation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. So next one is you've got Guehi, obviously heavily linked with Newcastle this season. I actually don't think we're going to get him. Interestingly, I changed my mind the last 24 hours. I don't think I don't not want him, but I just don't think we're going to get him. Right, so this year's stats, I talked about it so much already. I feel like I know him. But in terms of, we know he plays very composed on the ball playing defensive role. Is a ball playing centre back. Obviously can play left centre back, right centre back, through the middle. Is as a 6 if you really want to push the ball out. Excels in his passing, in the 98th percentile per pass, attempted passes per 90. And 83.3% pass completion. Palace often use him for the switch balls, which is what Fabian Schär is famed for as well. Hence why I think Eddie Howe looks at him as well. Guehi contributes to the build-up of Palace as well. 2.50 progressive passes, which is exceptional, I think, for a defender anyway. And 1.25 passes into the final third per 90, which would help us, especially defensively. He's active in 1.25 tackles and 2.5 interceptions. Obviously, he's a more proactive defender, hence why we call upon him. Hence why we want him. 4.75 clearances per 90 as well. So he's a lot of final third action in his own half action as well. Strengths and weaknesses. Dribbling and progression to show that as well, how he's able to kind of carry the ball out of pressure. Chance creation, creates a lot of chances for his team and for set pieces as well. Gets into the opposition half a lot, adds numbers into the final third, as well as kind of set piece, takes set piece duty for Palace as well. At finishing, in terms of weaknesses, that's a bit harsh finishing. He's a defender, so I'm not going to take too much from him in there. Defensive contributions, he's got low defensive stats of only 1.44 tackles and 0.23 interceptions. So he's not the. Is good.
That low for a defender?
Yes. If you compare him to other defenders, it's relatively low.
Yeah, see, I like defenders that can defend.
That can defend. But so what's your thoughts on Guehi? Why did is it again because it's going to come cheap?
Close because we get a 20% discount on this player,
right?
Because he's ex-Carbon, so there's a sell-on clause, 20%. Right. So that's going to be really attractive to Ighbali. But I mean, the names that I suggested to you, Philip, are the names that I think they're going to buy, or if they are going to buy, these are the ones going to buy these, not necessarily who I would like them to buy.
Chelsea.
Right?
I think, yeah.
All right. So I think in this instance, we need this experience. We need this leadership. Good that he's ex-Chelsea. That 20% discount, though, I think is the major motivating factor here. Palace are still asking for a hefty fee. So I think ultimately he's going to be beyond Chelsea's cash flow right now.
So he's still. If you were to guess, do you think what's the likelihood of him going to Chelsea, or do you think he'll end up at Newcastle or any other club really?
I don't think he's coming to Chelsea. I think what we can expect is either Tosin or we know Chalobah is going to be sold. That's already baked into the finances. So for me, it's a question of if they sell Tosin but it's going to be sell to buy this guy. And even with the 20% discount, I think he's beyond their means.
Okay, we're going to look out for that. Aaron, just going back to Gittens, think he's got all the attributes to be a top player. It's like a solo profiles make teams. I just see Eddie molding him into an output machine. And you know what? Eddie Howe and the coaching staff, they do play, in my thinking, especially with players like Gittens and others, they do play a big part in terms of similar to in terms of what I think they can do with them. So I see where you're coming from with that, Aaron. Thank you for kind of getting back to us on that one. Goatfather, Guehi or Malik Chow, and I'll be happy. Yeah. I think also Nathan Collins have been linked to him as well. I think he's decent. He is a defender that likes to defend, for sure. Spurs are looking at Guehi too. Goatfather. They just got Stanzo on the permanent, but then maybe they got Dragonshin. Do they need more defensive cover? Maybe they do. And Sam from Man United, good to see you, sir. God bless you. Great to have you join us as well. So that's Guehi, the man of the moment. He's letting 5 goals. Well, it might be more. I don't know. I haven't seen the latest. I don't know.
I heard some were his fault. I didn't get to see all of it. I heard that some of them were his fault. You watched the match, right?
Yeah, I saw the first half. To be honest, I haven't, and bought to the second half. But I'm sure once it would be interesting to get your take on when you do see it, Bobby. France was so opened up. It felt like I was asking guys in my WhatsApp group, did Ange Postecoglou take over France? Like they were so opened up. Where yes, the goals, especially I think I saw the first 4 goals. Like I was but they were so opened up where I'm half like, this is goalkeeping, but the defense so opened up. I just felt like almost sorry for the goalkeeper. So it's hard to judge for me. I mean, it does have one of his strengths though. Shot stopping, distribution. I don't know too much about it. I don't know if he's got in terms of is he good with his feet, but distributions on 38.2% pass completion or launch passes, which is quite high actually, which is not too bad. Sweeper keeper, 1.84 defensive actions. He'll do well for us if he was playing then in terms of that. But he seems, I don't know. Weaknesses, cross handling. That's dangerous in the Premier League. If that's true, that's dangerous. I wonder if he can see it from a set piece today. And the other one is again, I don't see long passes as a completion error. This is what AI does sometimes, but I don't see that as a completion error for a goalkeeper. That's not too bad. Penalty kicks, his save percentage is not too high. Fair, okay, I'll take that as well. But Maignon, is he another kind of? He is. I mean, Chelsea's trying to buy him for 10 million. It sounds like more of what you're saying.
Yeah, look, I think Chelsea fans are all over this because he has committed the same number of errors for Milan in the league as over the last 4 years as Sanchez has committed just last season.
Right.
So right. Chelsea sees that fans are looking forward to him coming I agree with you with the crosses. That's problematic in this league, particularly since our team itself is quite short. So, a commanding keeper is necessary. But again, I think it's purely a financial decision. It got quite toxic with Sanchez at points in time at Stamford Bridge. And obviously, the feedback from the crowd to his antics undermined the confidence of the entire team. So you had a number of games where there was booing and that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
Sanchez really needs to go. And it's just because his errors are such big holders, right? But generally, he's actually, saved or gooses in a number of games where if he didn't perform those saves, we would have dropped points big time. But this AC Milan keeper, he's got 1 year left. Milan clearly would like to pocket some money off of him. And it looks as though the way the fee is being structured, Chelsea lowballed it, obviously, but I think the latest report is that it's now coming out at around 20 to 25 million.
Yeah.
And and a significant portion of the fee is actually apparently add-ons, so success-based. So when you really think about a club that just spent 1.5 billion nickel and diamond over 20 million euros, you understand the state that we're in.
Right.
It's a problem, and it's not being talked about enough, right? But again, fans are demanding improvement. And it's getting fairly toxic. The club feels the need to do something. This guy on a 1 year left on his contract will shut people up. Is he the answer? Not really sure. I was never really particularly impressed with him. But he's the French keeper, France #1 team in the world. So
Chevalier.
I'm sorry?
Was it Chevalier? Oh, for Maignon.
Yes.
Yeah.
For Maignon, yeah. All right, so he's the French. He's #1 keeper of France.
How old is he now? I can't remember.
Isn't he 29?
Okay.
So he's got the experience. I think it's 29. So quick thought there.
He always seems a bit old. I don't know if it's because of all them cigars.
Yeah, 29 years.
29 years old, right? So he's got a bit. Yeah.
So it's the maturity, age we need, etc.
Yeah.
But you're right. That cross handling is not good enough.
It's going to make up for an interesting season if that's the case. All right, so we've got a few more questions and comments here. I've started the questions from previous folks, and well done for continuing to send them in. I think, Bobby, it's more related to the stuff that you're talking about earlier as well, but I'll get through these ones and we'll go back to the earlier questions as well. Hopefully we'll get them all through. Oh, sorry, yes, Adrian Pickett thought Guehi rejected Spurs. I think he did as well. You're right, Adrian. And I think it was from a reliable source. I think you're right. I think Guehi did reject Spurs. Aaron Kane, I just have a feeling we go for someone like Diomande. That's the other one, Diomande or Chow to partner Botman. Yes, because I don't know if I think Aaron, you was because I was watching Loaded Mag, and I think Graham Bailey mentioned Diomande as well. I wouldn't mind Diomande. I remember doing a review on him a little while ago. So yeah, I wouldn't mind Diomande as well. I have to see how he's doing recently, but I take it hopefully not too bad. Great call though, Sam. Surprised you lot didn't go for Kelleher. Again, another review I remember doing on Kelleher as well. I am too, but is he going to West Ham? Is he going to West Ham?
No, he's going to Brentford.
Is that I'm not trying to. If no, so-called top 6 club went for him, is that a sign that maybe there's things that scouts are seeing that maybe we're not seeing? Do you think, Bobby? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I think he's a good keeper.
Kelleher, I think Kelleher is great. I've been tweeting about that all week. Like, how do we let
Right.
him go for? He went for like 18 million pounds as
18
well,
million.
something
Crazy.
nuts, right? And he's a good keeper. So I
Yes.
don't get it. I wish we did. It would have been the move.
Right. I know why we didn't go for him. Obviously, we've already kind of, well, actually, yeah, I guess we just rate Trafford a little bit more. I think Trafford is also a little bit younger as well. So that'll be a big thing for us. Sam. I repeat my own name twice. Sam. Philip could I talk about your take on what you said on the football terrace? I disagree. Absolutely. That's what these football discussions are. I think you've let me know what your question is. Sorry, I'm having to do. Here we go. Question: And what is a player? And what is a player rejecting the club is a bid, and he say no, or club a talk to the player, and his feeling not feeling it, but there is no bid, or just both are rejection. And what is a player rejecting the club is a bid, and he say no, or a club to talk to the player is not feeling it, but there is no bid, or just being. So, if correct me if I'm wrong, Sam. I know that. So on the football terrace, we debated about the whole Mbema move, and it was around. I think me saying that because we were talking about bit like kind of market prices and bids. So I made a suggestion that if Mbeumo, if Brentford value Mbeumo around 60 million has been reported, it doesn't mean that anybody has to buy him for 60 million. Like if buyers refuse to buy him, then it could be lowered. And my claim was essentially that Man United are overpaying for your Mbeumo's and your Cunhas, and that is having the ripple effect on the market itself. And I don't know if you're saying, but if a player himself is rejecting other clubs, so there's no need for them to bid, therefore, what's the difference in terms of whether clubs bid or not? If that's your question, Samson, I don't know. But I think we talked about that, and obviously we can't talk about, we don't know the ins and outs of the Mbeumo deal. I think where Terry and I left it, and I understand where Terry's coming from, he feels that the buyers and sellers are both responsible for any adverse effects on the market. Whereas I feel that the buyers are, because I feel like if you're selling the car and you feel that it's £3,000, but you've got no buyers willing to give it for willing to pay £3,000 for it, and you still want to sell the car, you inevitably have to lower the price. So yeah, but Sam, let me know if I've answered your question. Do clarify it for me, no problem. 29. Oh, we got a Chelsea fan too. Yes, Bobby Fairview is in the building. I think Caicedo and Enzo prices would be best to use as an example about clubs overpaying and basically. Also, just going back to my original point. Okay, I think Caicedo and Enzo prices would be best to use as an example about clubs overpaying and basically messing up the market since we got a Chelsea fan. Okay, well, I'll ask you, Bobby. I mean, I don't know if you kind of are following, if I've kind of explained it properly. And essentially, what's your kind of take on the kind of Enzo and Caicedo deals? So,
yeah, I mean, I think they brought.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Do you think do you think those had a negative impact on the market for it? Or just like, not even that really, what's the kind of ins and outs of those kind of deals? Like, why were they so high? Was it because Chelsea are willing to pay for it? Was it the sellers? Like, what do you think made those? I think with Caicedo it's a bit more clearer because Liverpool did put in a bid. So it's a little bit different. I think Sam's acknowledging, kind of going directly to my argument, which is bidders and sellers. But I think it's different for Caicedo because Liverpool did bid. But for Enzo, I don't believe anybody bid for Enzo Fernandez. So hence, why did Chelsea pay £100 million plus for him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of this recent history of Chelsea since the sanctions, once you get through your series looking at other clubs for next year, it'll be good for you and I to have a sit down because the audience does seem to be interested in the financing story of Chelsea and a lot of the history around the ownership and what they've been doing. And it's actually, I think, interesting in the context of what Newcastle should and could be doing as well. It'll be interesting for us to have that conversation. But just to answer the question here from Sam, and to give that history, look, we were at a stage where it has to do with the way the ownership took over, right? You have the story of Chelsea is that Todd Bowley wanted to buy Chelsea since 2018, I heard, or the rumor is. But Todd Bowley never had the money and couldn't afford Chelsea. And therefore, when the UK government forced the sale, he had been sniffing around the longest and went to private equity companies to raise the money. So therein comes Egbali, who is a co-founder of Clearlake Capital. So Bowley only had 300 million. He got another 600 million from his friends, two guys that he invests with. And they got the remaining 1.6 million from Clearlake, who were an institutional investor. They allowed Bowley to make a lot of these decisions. Bowley came in. He recently admitted he did not understand how competitive international football is and professional football is. He came in playing sporting director. He has a different philosophy about sports club management. He believes in star players driving fan engagement and that driving revenue. So he was buying a lot of big names initially. So he wanted to put his mark on the books, if you like. The ownership group did, and they bought a lot of expensive players. They needed creativity in midfield, and so they bought Enzo Fernandez. They needed him that January window. Then there was the Caicedo move. Obviously, we beat Liverpool to that, etc. No question that we overpaid for those two players, including. I mean, it's debatable. Now that you see the price for Wirtz, now that you see what Arsenal paid for Rice, it's not a terrible fee, but I still feel that Caicedo was an £80 million player, Enzo £50 million at best. I don't think it distorted the market as a whole. Simply because if you would realize the subsequent January transfer window, so let me be precise as to which January that is, January before last, I don't think there was a material transfer in the market in January last year. Can you recall one?
No,
it wasn't. It was
radio silence. Radio silence.
Dead, right? And that is because I think that PSR has had a depressive impact on transfer prices. So I actually think the trend, and Chelsea was pushing that trend towards more expensive, but then last January happened, PSR points, deductions, etc. Everybody was fearful. You realize that people in Manchester United is no longer paying the big wages that they used to. A number of clubs are no longer paying these big wages. They're walking away from deals. So I think that was more powerful in correcting the pricing in the market than any damage that Chelsea would have done. But I think everybody knew that Chelsea was overpaying for players.
Yeah. So Sam says, thanks for that. That's a proper breakdown. Thank you, Bob. And we've got a few starred questions here for you, Bobby, as well.
Sure.
If you've got some time as well, some really insightful questions. We've got 20 minutes left, and some of these questions are big questions, so probably require a show in themselves. But we'll do the best that we can to answer them in the time limit, if that's all right, folks. So, and you're okay to stay on, Bobby, aren't you?
Yeah, no, I'm good. Yeah.
All right. So, Aaron Cave. Excuse me. Santos is a player I rate a lot. Would 100% take him as a Joe Linton understudy to eventually replace him as him. His stats have been one of the best in Europe this season. Do you think Santos would work in a Newcastle midfield? You relatively rate him, don't you?
But not for Joe Linton. Joe Linton plays more advanced, more like an advanced 8, almost 10. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah.
I think that Santos's strengths are more defensive.
Okay.
So he calls himself he describes himself as a 5 being able to play 8. We would normally talk about a 6. He describes himself as a 5. He's the big duel winner, right? So he wins something like 12, 13 duels in a match, kind of thing.
Right.
So I'd say you probably compete more with a Tonali, probably more a Guimaraes.
Right. Okay.
Possibly. Do you rate him at Newcastle? Look, he'd be interesting to bring in as an unstudy because you've got such a strong midfield already. But I wouldn't rely on him to try to take a team to trophies, right? Because he's still questionable why he was not being called up by Brazil. Brazil was prepared to play Joe Linton in a pivot in their last game and not play Andre Santos. Do you remember the last Brazil game? What was it was Joe Linton and somebody else.
Oh yeah. Right?
And they got murdered. Brazil was prepared to do that, but not call up Andre Santos. To me, all that is telling. These coaches know better than I do, right? So I would be worried about that.
Okay.
But look, he's a good player. He's got great stats in France. I don't know how people feel about the French league. They generally translate to the Premier League, but he'd be more defensive.
Yeah, I don't mind the French league. It's physical. I think, again, there's no real league that matches the intensity of it, but it's not that it can't be transferable like it does. Players can do it. Aaron Kane, the rules are in place. This is obviously going back to the financial elements of things. The rules are in place to benefit the Cartel 6 clubs. These rules came in as soon as Newcastle were taken over. This is no coincidence. It's a bit of a statement there, but what's your thoughts on it? Just if you have any thoughts on it, let us know, Bobby.
Yeah, look, I think the entire environment is shifting, and I'm not sure that Newcastle fans are shifting with it. Mm-hmm. I think you guys are burnt by the reaction to the takeover, and the actions taken by the likes of that Cartel 6 against Newcastle. Did Bully take over Chelsea before the Saudis? I think it was afterwards, right? So. I mean, I think right now, the way the Premier League is, after Manchester City won that big victory in terms of the sponsorship rules, I think there's an opportunity for Newcastle to be a lot more assertive about what it wants to do. Other people are cheating. You guys are playing by the rules, and you're losing. Right? So I think there's an opportunity to be a lot more strident. The other thing to consider is the amount of clubs owned by Americans, particularly with the promotion of Leeds. And I think there are 2 clubs that are coming up that are owned by Americans. So you're going to have a situation very shortly where the majority of the owners are actually American owners. And we'd be relying on the Saudi owners to save us from a lot of their governing philosophy. Okay. So these are things to think about. And the Americans are doing things in the UK because of the lax rules around ownership that they can't do in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So these are some of the emerging threats to football that people should be more concerned about. I don't think the Cartel 6 is a thing. I think American ownership is a thing. The Americans understand that it is profitable to own a sports club. What they have not gotten their heads around is relegation. Relegation effectively means that your investment in a sports club could become zero.
Yes.
In the US, there's no relegation, so you are always guaranteed revenue. So you will never go bankrupt. Your investment could never become zero, right? So we can expect whittling away at the notion of relegation, the need to, Bowley just suggested that relegated teams get a share in the Premier League. All these kinds of things they want to throw out there now. These are the emerging threats.
Right.
Forget the big six. That construct doesn't exist anymore.
That is deep. That is an insightful response there. Appreciate you, Bobby, for that. Aaron with one more question here as well. A dual club statement really. Dual club model is something Staveley and Yassir talked about before. Yeah, I remember when we whispered the word multi-club ownership and they did the whole vote on it. It was crazy. We only won by one because I think Wolves said no. It's either Wolves or Nottingham Forest. They were like, oh no, we like it. It's okay. I don't see us getting into that model in the near future. There was talks of clubs in Brazil, yes, and France, but I see us doing it. I think we will too. I think we will get into it a little bit more, for sure.
You see, this is where you need to, people think multi-club is something new. Manchester City Group has existed for a very long time.
Yeah.
They've owned New York City. They own several clubs that people didn't even know that. I didn't even know I didn't know until last year that they owned Girona, for example. But everybody knows that Chelsea owns Strasbourg.
Yeah.
So right. So the way City has quietly gone about their business is the way to do it, right? Because there are at least 4 or 5 clubs at this point within that group. And here's how it's beneficial, right? And Andres Santos, who ordinarily, so we overpaid for him as a kid, struggled, as they generally always do when they come out from South America. Newcastle's been lucky, actually. Your South American players do well. Nobody else's do. But it gives you an opportunity to send your players out for development that you think are slow developers who will benefit the club in the future. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm,
so it's really a useful model in my mind, which Newcastle has obviously the capital to do and should do to build that black and white franchise.
Yeah, just in the Brazilians, I think since Eddie Howe came, the South Americans did well, because Joe Linton before Eddie Howe.
He was flop of the season.
But well, there was over the Premier League era people were talking about. So the turnaround, it's Mr. Bruce just didn't want to coach anybody. Then he missed it. Here we go. So excellent there. One more question. I think it's a really insightful question from Mobojog. Question for Bobby. Is it a race to the bottom where we want our clubs to join the cities, the Chelsea clubs, to get around PSR, given all the ways to circumvent it? What's the end game here for PSR and EPL?
Right. I think we recently saw some advertisements by the government. They seem to be, the government of the United Kingdom, they seem to be staffing a regulatory office for football. I don't know if you've seen those reports.
No. I haven't.
They literally had listings. They were hiring for these roles.
Okay.
Right now, I think everybody knows that it does not work. It is equally not in the interest of the sport to be forcing clubs to sell their homegrown talent.
Yeah.
If you think about the connectivity between you as a fan and a player that has come through your academy and is doing well in your first team, that player-fan bond is irreplaceable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And right now, that's being eroded for every club. That needs to be fixed. And Ineos, their owner, he's been making that comment, right? So he's in favor of doing it. I think the ideal situation, instead of having a means test for the club, you should have a means test for the owner. Can the owner afford to hold this football club? Because I don't know if you've ever looked, well, you spent a lot of time looking at the accounts of these football clubs, right? Or at least of Newcastle.
For Newcastle, yeah.
You will see that a football club is not it's a cash drain, right?
Yeah.
So the owner has to be committed and has to have the means to constantly support it. Right now, Chelsea and all of its holding companies are technically insolvent. And the only reason the auditors issue a clean audit report is because the owners have demonstrated to them that they have the means to continue financing $200 million of operating losses from now until they plan to sell in 2033. So for me, the future of it is, particularly as teams continue to make a joke of it by selling things to themselves, as long as UEFA is just issuing, very small fees for breaching FFP and the clubs just pay and continue to play, it's almost pointless, right? And you're going to get a situation where people like Todd Bowley can own a Chelsea, although he can't afford to own Chelsea.
Right.
Whereas you would have the PIF, the largest, source of wealth in the world, they can't invest in their club. It's a joke.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Todd Bowley could only raise $300 million, and he is chairman of Chelsea. Go figure. PIF can't do what they want, and they got money that they're swimming in. Right? Makes no sense.
What's your take, though, in terms of Wobujog, you can clarify, but my impression from what you're saying, Wobujog, is it a race to the bottom where we want our clubs to join the cities in the Chelsea? Because I know, for instance, from my take, if I can expand on it, Wobujog, into Bobby, is because some of the suggestions in terms of Newcastle should do what Chelsea do when they've been aggressive enough in terms of doing what they're doing in terms of the loopholes and everything else, which I understand and I get. I suspect PIF are playing the waiting game in terms of seeing how it all pans out, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's not a race to the bottom. Look, the amount of clubs in the Premier League right now that are owned by billionaires like never before. Right. So I think the risk to the system is the Chelsea model, because the Chelsea owners actually cannot afford to hold Chelsea.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're borrowing money. Anytime you see Chelsea buy a player, they've borrowed that money. Yeah. And they've borrowed it from people who expect a return on that money. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're getting yourself in a situation where the Chelseas are reckless. Now, do we care if Chelsea's owners actually go bankrupt? We don't, right? So the rules are good enough to actually make sure that the club actually don't even let me say that, right? Because the assets of the club are pledged as collateral for these loans. But all it means is that, just like Inter Milan, where the private equity firm that loaned that owner money to buy it, they're now controlling Inter Milan, the private equity firm. So it would just be a matter of Chelsea changing hands between private equity firms as if they default on these loans.
The firm that controls Inter Milan controls Chelsea.
No. It's a similar kind of firm.
Oh,
It's
okay,
called
okay,
Oak Tree Capital. So
right.
if you look at the universe of owners, right, a lot of the Italian clubs are now owned by private equity
Yeah,
firms
yeah, yeah,
because their owners defaulted on loans.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Right. So these private equity firms are effectively loan sharks. All right. So they'll make
Okay,
sure that you can fail, but when you fail, they don't own the club.
right. Okay, I understand.
See what I'm saying? But yeah, I don't think it's a race to the bottom per se because of the amount of. It's no fashionable for a billionaire to own a football club, right? So the
Because
fortunes to me follow the billionaires as opposed to any particular race to the bottom. I think it's a bunch of games. The rule, any regulator is desperately needed to start sniffing these transactions before they allow these clubs to self-police themselves.
wow. Well, it's very. I've learned. I didn't think I could do it twice, but in 1 week. But these programs, I'm gonna keep doing these series. I've learned so much. Whether it's from yourself today, Bobby, incredible show, and the questions the chat asked. Oh, there's one more question here as well from MoboJog. Oh, I think it's a statement. Let me just read it. Excuse me. There are two camps: the Levy Arsenal. Sorry, excuse me. There are two camps: the Levy Arsenal Liverpool PSR camp and City Chelsea Villa camp, as seen in support of City's case in between club player sales. I'm starting to think Arsenal need to switch camps. Do you read a situation like that, Bobby, in terms of the Man City case? Because Newcastle is what the interesting case where Newcastle have been in it is. Yes, Newcastle, for instance, we use some of the evidence based on like from the takeover of Newcastle to say, hey, look, clubs have, and I know it's a separate case. I'm not trying to conflate them, but Newcastle essentially have been evidence has been given through Newcastle in terms of like unfair competition and stuff like that. Hence why it was deemed unlawful. But Newcastle have also not been, as you said, like advocating or kind of screaming from the rafters PSR needs to change. There's no public statement from PSR necessarily that where it kind of pertains to that. But do you see? Yeah, go on. Yeah,
I would have seen it as three different camps, to be honest. The Levy, Liverpool, Arsenal, those are clubs in my mind that are legitimately trying to run the clubs as a self-sustaining business.
okay.
Right, where they all no the club that's perfected this is Brighton.
Yeah,
Right. So
yeah,
in terms of organically generating cash flows
yeah.
from player sales, just a production line of buy cheap, sell high, zero football ambition, investing to win trophies is too much risk. That's the Brighton model, right?
Right.
That's the Tottenham model. Zero ambition, but very profitable, good cash flows, stadium generating cash. Then you've got the Newcastles, etc., who are not in this for profit, who would like to be able to spend their money, but who are not stupid either. So I expect that Newcastle is going to build a model just like City, but City's model requires cash as well, right? So it's a really well-run organization, but the priority is success, not profit, right? So it's
Yeah.
well-run to be successful. I like that model, right? Then there's the Chelsea, okay, who is not really in either. So they're not willing to do things properly. So they're doing all kinds of tricks and this kind of thing
Yeah.
to comply, right? They're not using their own money. They're spending borrowed money, so they spend it frivolously, right? And they've got operating losses as far as the eye can see. I don't know which camp Villa is in. Villa to me runs a really high payroll, but I feel like
Yes.
if their owners are, and they're going to probably have to sell somebody to make the books balance. But I feel like Villa have that sporting ambition and would be in that camp of the Newcastles, the City, but I would not put Chelsea in that category.
They're
Chelsea is
very.
trying to be like the Arsenal, etc., but they're just not competent enough.
There you have it, Robojog. Fantastic. I've got a couple more comments if it's okay,
Sure.
Bobby. Just I'll go through them, and so many people are think it's been a great show, and so Aaron Kane, very insightful, Bobby. The reason why maybe I'm still processing all of this. I'm like, if you guys think I'm a bit slow today, it's literally I'm processing a lot of this. Is like, it's incredible. Adrian Pickett, excellent convo. Absolutely.
Respect all these guys. Respect all these guys. I enjoy them in the chat, actually.
They're brilliant.
When I'm a very up.
Wobojog, we need Bobby for another show. Seriously? Well, I won't put him under pressure, but I'm sure I'll ask him behind the scenes and see what kind of show we can arrange for you guys if possible. I'm sure
Look,
I can.
I think a session just breaking down the Chelsea story and the Newcastle story, contrasting it and what we think are the options available to Newcastle based on what Chelsea is doing. That could be in, because this audience does seem to be engaged on those kind of topics as well.
Yeah, 100%. That's a fantastic. Thanks. So that's a yes. We'll do. You've heard it right here, right now. We're doing it. Absolutely. Kurt Thompson, first Man City fan. Brilliant. My first Man City fan, I think, as well. Big up, bro. New subscriber. God bless you, Kurt. Welcome to the channel. You're fantastic to have you on, and hope you will enjoy the show and the channel. Adrian Pickett, it was such a great show. I didn't mention Saka once. Adrian, to Adrian, so that's to Adrian. You guys are having a laugh. It's great. One more here, DJ Sav. My first time seeing you, DJ Sav. Welcome to. If it's your
Chelsea
first time,
fan, I recognize.
Well, yeah, a Chelsea fan. Big up, Bobby. Great seeing you starting up your channel. First time here, Bobby. You started up a channel.
I'm not. DJ Saj, this is Philip's channel. I'm a guest. Second time.
Oh, right.
Happy to be here.
I was like, oh, I was going to say, I'll come on, like, if you allow. I'm like, really? Okay. It's my
Sorry,
channel.
DJ Staff. I would not have a channel called Toon Tactics.
But big up DJ Sam, much appreciated.
DJ Staff. Yeah, I love.
My bad, man. No problem at all. No problem at all. No problem at all. I think maybe the thumbnail threw him off. Maybe when you're scrolling through, and you just, I think the thumbnail, it's incredible. If I do say so myself, I was happy when I saw that. Big up, Bobby. Great. So it's from DJ Sav. I didn't finish your comment. Big up, Bobby. Great seeing you starting up your channel, which we know it's not. First time here as Chelsea. Big up to you, sir. Please, folks, I keep on forgetting this stuff. Please do like, share, and subscribe. And you guys, and the thing is, you guys respond really well to the reminders. It's just my fault for continuously forgetting. But please do like, share, and subscribe. I see you in the comments on a lot of other streams. Subscribe today. Oh, brilliant. Thank you for your sub. But if you think you subscribed to Bobby, it wasn't to Bobby. It was. I wouldn't be offended if you unsubscribe, but I'll be very happy to have you, DJ. Like, honestly, it'll be great to have you. But if you feel like you made a mistake, I hope you stay on. One more question from Kurt: does anyone want Bernardo, Gundo, or Jack Grealish? All will most likely are leaving, and Stones too. I'll take Grealish. But final question for you, Bobby: would you take any of these guys at Chelsea?
Grealish. I like Grealish a lot. Yeah. But look, his wages are beyond. Like, a lot of people don't appreciate Grealish, right, and what he does. Yeah. People just don't appreciate a player that actually keeps the ball up there and allows the rest of the team to get into position. And he's excellent at that. And I actually think he could be a lot more useful. I think he's being misused completely by Pep. It would really be interesting to see Eddie Howe. I think Eddie Howe might be able to extract some performance from him, actually.
Honestly. Do you know what I would really want to see? Grealish, Bruno, and Tonali. So Grealish and Bruno themselves are one of the most foul players in the league. They're insane.
Got it.
That would just be absolutely beautiful. But folks, we've come to the end of the show. It's been absolutely, you can tell from the comments, people really, really, really enjoyed the show. Bobby, you've been absolutely your insight, information, knowledge, and all of this is amazing. And right here live, we're gonna do a follow-up series on this, exactly what Bobby explained earlier. I'm going to work on a really good thumbnail for that as well. So do look out for it. Hopefully we'll have it for you guys in the next, as soon as we can get availability to do it. And we'll follow up with that. We talked about all things Chelsea. We reviewed the Chelsea season. We reviewed obviously the playing style, some of the weaknesses and strengths in terms of what Chelsea's team and various achievements. But we also went into real super in depth in terms of the finances that are going on behind Chelsea, the Chelsea ownership. Talked about other ownerships as well, Newcastle and all the other teams as well. But it's been absolutely in depth and phenomenal. We talked about obviously the Premier League, PSR, and everything else that's tied to it. It's been absolutely insightful. We've got a few new subscribers as well. You guys have been amazing. I'm gonna timestamp the video, so as always we do, so you guys can actually, if you guys are particularly interested in the PSR stuff, and it's kind of throughout the video, but if you guys are interested in it, you can kind of go straight to those timestamps and kind of hear what kind of the in-depth discussions we had around that. But Bobby, where can people find you in terms of online and everything else?
So at Bobby Fairview, and I think it's right. I put it as my name. I don't know if how StreamYard shows the names underneath the what should have been my picture, but at Bobby Fairview, BobbyFairview on X.
And I'll put it on our description, and when I advertise it on, I'll put it on X as well. So I'll put Bobby's X account on there as well. So guys, as always, make sure you look after each other, and may God bless you all. Take care, guys. Take care now.